After a decade of investing on my own and years of creating content related to this topic, I'm about to show you 7 investing mistakes that are super easy to avoid, that I also made the mistake at the beginning of my career that I wish I knew earlier because I'd have a lot more money right now. But before we get started, my name is Sully. I run the company InvestLane, where our mission is to help others learn how to save and invest wisely to build lasting wealth. And all I ask is that if you do find value in this video, that you consider hitting the like, subscribe, and notifications button for future content like this. And I will say, just a few minutes of truly watching this video, it could really save you hundreds of thousands of dollars down the road, regardless of your income level. Alright, so knowing that, the first mistake that I wish I knew earlier is not considering taxes. Now, when most people first start investing, they usually focus on one thing, and that is how much money can your investment actually make? And while the amount that you can make, your total return, is extremely important, one thing that many investors actually ignore is not considering how much you actually keep from those returns after taxes. I want to emphasize this because the reality is 2 investments can have the exact same return, but depending on the type of investment you have, how long you've held the investment, the dividend structure, your tax bracket situation, where you're going to own the investments, which I'll cover on shortly, but to also consider state taxes or tax loss harvesting opportunities, there ends up being a ton of different factors that impact how much you actually keep after taxes from your investments. Now, to keep things simple for this, I'm just going to compare 2 investments with different scenarios and how much they could actually impact your returns after taxes. The first concept to mention here is how long you've held the investment, where the example would be if you had $100,000 invested into the S&P 500 with VOO, and after a full year, that investment has now grown to $115,000 due to a strong market, and if you were to wait just over a full year, let's say 13 months before you were to sell the entire investment, then that means that you would trigger what's called a long-term capital gain on the $15,000 profit that you captured. All that means is that depending on your tax bracket, you could actually pay anywhere from literally 0%, 15%, and even up to 20% in federal taxes at the highest level. But if you sold VOO at $115,000, but instead of 13 months, that was just under a year, at now 11 months, that would instead be treated as a short-term capital gain, which is taxed the same way as your ordinary income bracket, that is between 10 to 37%. And with this, you could very well end up paying close to double in taxes. So if you don't realize the timing on what makes a short-term capital gain, which is less than a year, versus a long-term capital gain when you sell an investment, that would be if you held it for more than 1 year, that difference alone could easily cost you a much higher tax bill. So not just does timing matter, but the type of investment and how it's structured also has a huge impact. For example, ETFs, especially if you're getting a high turnover, actively managed one, they are going to be much more tax efficient than if you were to choose a mutual fund. Or when it comes to dividends, dividend income is taxed whether you reinvest the income or not. So to reduce what's called tax drag, which is how much tax is dragged down your investments over time, you'd ideally want a tax efficient, growth oriented, which is ideally a low income dividend paying stock or fund. So to see a simple visual, this chart right here shows the hypothetical growth of $500,000 over 20 years at 7.5% per year in growth, where a 0% tax drag would lead to $2.1 million. A 1% tax drag would be $1.7 million, and then a 2% tax drag would be just above $1.4 million, which is roughly $700,000 less after 20 years of time, simply by not considering taxes properly. Not to mention, but I also love showing this image that we created at InvestLane that helps you better understand this even more, because a growth fund like SCHG with a 0.4% dividend yield and potential for 100% qualified dividends, which means if you hold the fund long enough, your dividends can be treated as long-term capital gains. And all that means is that on a $100,000 investment, that would generate $400 in dividends, and you would only pay $60 in taxes, which is a 0.06% tax rate. Especially for the long-term growth investors, that number is huge to see, because if we then look at a poor tax-efficient investment like JPI that pays a high income of about 8%, which would mostly be treated as ordinary income, which by the way, this example is using a median income earner at the tax rate of 22%, and that would end up leading you into a 1.65% annual tax rate. And if you didn't realize, that difference is very close to the previous chart that I showed that had an impact of hundreds of thousands of dollars as you invest throughout the years. Now, I made a ton of content related to this topic, so don't forget after this video that I'm gonna have relevant videos that are very similar to this style in much more detail based on what you may be interested in. I'm gonna have that linked in the description below. But in the end, And this is something I wish I understood much earlier, because taxes are one of those things that you don't really think are very important when you first get started, but over decades of investing, if you never even consider them, they can have a massive impact on your overall wealth. And so as we speak about taxes, the next mistake I also wish I knew earlier, and that is to avoid putting investments in the wrong account, which is by understanding what's called asset location. This section can also have a significant impact on your wealth, because if you didn't know, there are different types of investment accounts that are taxed differently. The standard most known one is a normal taxable brokerage account that many like to use, whether that be something like SoFi or Fidelity, but there are also tax advantaged accounts like a 401k, HSA, or IRA that offer tax benefits depending on the type of account. Which, by the way, if you want to see some of the best brokerage accounts or IRAs in the market, I'm going to have a direct link below to our review by InvestLane. But to understand the differences, a visual here, if we look at an account like the traditional IRA, when you first get started, whatever you contribute into the account, that's considered pre-tax money that you could potentially get a tax deduction in the year up front on what you contribute. Money can then grow tax deferred, where later on, after you reach the age of 59 and a half or above, you can start withdrawing from the account, but at that time, you are going to be taxed as ordinary income. For some, depending on your position, this can be beneficial, but something I love even more, especially for those that have decades to invest, is the Roth IRA. With this account being structured as a Roth, which also has the same concept as a Roth 401k, you can see that once you get started, you are going to be contributing after-tax money, which means that you're going to be paying taxes on what you contribute in the year up front, where you can then invest however you want completely tax-free thereafter. And then once you pass the age of 59 and a half or above, assuming that you meet the 5-year rule, which shouldn't be a problem for most of you, then you can then start to withdraw however much you want out of the account, and that would be completely tax-free. Or my favorite, best of all, is a health savings account known as an HSA, where I use Fidelity, and they allow me to invest however I want. The structure here is known as a triple tax advantaged account because upfront you can get a tax deduction on what you put into the account, your investments can grow tax-free, and whatever you withdraw, if it is used for a qualified medical purchase, that can be completely tax-free, making this a triple tax advantaged account. But for a normal taxable brokerage account, you can get hit with things like taxes on dividends or interest income that you get within the year, or if you sell your investments and have a net capital gain, there are many ways that taxes can bring down your portfolio over time due to taxes. So that is exactly why I love the term asset location, which is understanding best where you place your assets. And the visual here shows the most to least tax efficient options, where growth funds like the S&P 500 and NASDAQ 100, they're very tax efficient options, but high income producing investments like JPI or JPQ, they're ideal to avoid in taxable accounts. All in all, if you want a poor tax efficient investment and you are seeking long-term growth in a taxable account, I'd highly recommend keeping that inside an IRA and keeping the tax efficient options in those that are in taxable accounts. But knowing that, the next mistake is ignoring investment fees. All right, so to just sum this up, when you invest in the stock market, there could potentially be fees, and if you're unaware of them, that needs to change. For starters, the simplest thing to first check is if you are buying ETFs or mutual funds, that there is an expense ratio, which is the annual cost that it takes to own the fund per year. That amount is automatically going to be taken out of your investment over time, and that's not something that you have to pay separately. Knowing that, when we look at the popular S&P 500 ETF through Vanguard, that is VOO, the fund costs 0.03% per year to own it, which means for every $10,000 that you invest, it would cost you $3 per year in fees. But if we instead change that to looking at the actively managed ETF by Cathie Wood that is called ARK, that has a 0.75% expense ratio. That means for every $10,000 that you invest, you would pay $75 per year to own the fund, and after years of doing this, just like the tax drag example that I mentioned earlier, that could really have a huge impact down the road. Aside from that, understand that depending on the account structure that you use, there could be advisory fees, whether that be a robo-advisor like SoFi's that costs 0.25% per year, but that is at least a much better option than a true financial advisor that may be 0.5% and even up to 2% of your entire portfolio value, no matter how good or bad your portfolio does. But one really nice thing for investors that are investing on their own is that unlike how things were years ago, nowadays pretty much all of the platforms offer $0 commissions on pretty much any trades that you do, where years ago, every single trade would have costed you a flat fee whenever you execute it. All right, so knowing that about investment fees, another mistake that I wish I knew earlier would be not understanding what you own. Now, this mistake is one that I see especially from newer investors, and that is buying investments without truly understanding what you own. The reason that this is such a big mistake is because every investment has a purpose, a strategy, and risk that comes along with it. And if you don't understand those things, you can easily end up owning something that doesn't align with your goals or your expectations. For example, someone might buy an ETF because they see it has a high dividend yield, or because someone online recommends it, but they never actually look into what companies are actually inside of the fund, how the fund generates its returns, or what could cause it to be volatile. You may also even be overlapping your ETFs without realizing it with funds like Vanguard's VOO, the S&P 500, Vanguard's Growth Fund VUG, and Vanguard's Infotech VGT, where each of these funds are market cap weighted and give technology a major amount of exposure, where VGT alone has 16% alone going into the company Nvidia, so you may very well end up having a lot of exposure to only the top few companies without realizing how much you actually own. Which, if you don't realize this, it could be a serious problem for your portfolio, because if the markets start to drop and tech stocks lead that decline, your portfolio could easily fall 20, 30, or even 50% very quickly. And when you don't fully understand what you own, a market decline like that could end up leading you into panic selling or holding on to an investment that may never recover, leading you into a sunken ship that can't get pulled out of the water. In the end, you don't need to be an expert and understand every single detail about the investment and their underlying fundamentals, but you should at least understand what you own, why you own it, how it fits in your portfolio, and how long you're willing to own it. You see, as a legendary investor Warren Buffett once said, if you're not willing to own a stock for 10 years, don't even think about owning it for 10 minutes. This leads me into the next mistake, that is taking on too much risk. Once you understand what you own, the next step is understanding whether the amount of risk you're actually taking makes sense for your situation, and this is where a lot of investors get it wrong. Most people assume that the way to build wealth faster is simply to take on more risk, because if a normal investment can grow 10% after a full year, but a different investment that may be able to grow 30%, although it's riskier, that may be more appealing due to the potential growth that you may be able to get. But the problem is, the higher potential returns typically come with a higher potential risk to losing your money. And while some risk is necessary to build wealth, taking on unnecessary risk can actually set you back years if you're not prepared for it. For example, someone who put their entire portfolio into one company or one speculative investment may experience incredible returns if they're right, but if they're wrong, that could permanently damage your finances. And I've heard stories of workers from GM back in 2009 when the stock price was slashing and the company wasn't doing well. They continued to pour more and more of their retirement savings into the stock in hopes that it would rebound, to then find out that on June 1st of 2009, GM filed for bankruptcy, being the largest industrial bankruptcy in American history by having $91 billion in assets, 235,000 employees worldwide, and a century of dominance that forced many of those investors to have to work for many more years instead of retiring when they wanted. All in all, that is why diversification and understanding your personal risk tolerance is super important, which is something that I heavily focus on with my YouTube channel and the startup that I recently created, because the hard-earned money that you save, it should be used wisely to build wealth. In the end, the biggest mistake that investors make isn't avoiding risk completely, it's taking on more risk than they actually understand or should. Because of that, the sixth mistake to mention here is to avoid trying to time the market. Now, a research study that I came to find from Charles Schwab showed that Peter, who perfectly timed the market every year, ended up growing the largest portfolio, but when compared to Ashley, who invested on the first trading day of the year, or Matthew, who invested every month consistently, or even Rosie, who had the worst timing from doing this at the market peak every year, they all were not significantly off from the perfect timing, which, by the way, perfect timing in the market is unheard of. Now, of all those examples, staying consistent is crucial and is expected when you are investing, but an even bigger problem is when you have time out of the market with your money, where a study I love to look at here is the performance of a $10,000 investment in the S&P 500 over a 20-year period from 2003 to 2022. If you stayed fully invested, your money would have grown to roughly $65,000. But if you missed just 10 of the best market days because you tried timing the market, or kept taking funds in and out, then you would have only grown your portfolio to just under $30,000. That alone makes the difference of averaging 9.8% of an annual return and making that down to 5.6% just because of 10 missed days. Which, on all your hard-earned money throughout your entire career, you really can't afford to miss that, because that's a huge difference. Not to mention, but something else that shocks me is a study that found a blindfolded monkey throwing darts at a financial newspaper could select a portfolio that would do just as well as ones carefully selected by by experts. Or my favorite of all, from the legendary investor Ray Dalio, who said, trying to time the stock market is harder than competing in the Olympics. In the end, you don't know what's going to happen in the markets, and any factors like you thinking there's going to be a recession soon, or interest rates will impact the market, or other speculative news that you're relying on, the data shows that if you just simply stay invested and move on with your life, then that allows your investments to properly grow over time as the economy develops. I say that because if you strongly believe in something like the US economy and that it's going to continue advancing in the future, then so would a low-cost index fund like the S&P 500. With that said, above all else, the last investing mistake that I wish I knew earlier is investing without a plan. Now, before deciding what to invest into, you first have to understand why you are investing in the first place. So you might want to ask yourself, are you investing for retirement? Or are you trying to buy a home? Are you trying to build an income to live off of one day before you actually hit retirement? All these are crucial to ask yourself because in the end, your goals are what determine everything else and the ability to stay disciplined. And not to mention, but when you have a timeline in mind, that impacts how much risk you are willing to take. Or if you are one desiring a certain amount of income every month, that impacts how much you need invested. In the end, your goals determine what investments actually make sense for you. So with that, one mistake that I see a lot of investors making is constantly changing strategies because they don't have a clear plan. Some will buy growth stocks when they're performing well, others will switch to dividend stocks when the markets change, or move to cash options because they're worried about a recession. With either of those scenarios, eventually they end up with a portfolio that is likely to be in the same position as they first started. So in the end, investing isn't about finding the perfect investment or making one perfect decision. It's about creating a simple strategy, sticking with it, and allowing time to compound your money and work for you in your favor. The investors who truly build long-lasting wealth usually aren't the ones that get everything right, but they're the ones that avoid major mistakes, stay consistent, and keep investing through decades. So after a decade of investing on my own, I strongly believe that if you can avoid these 7 mistakes, the odds of success increase significantly for your financial future. Now, I will mention that I've created an entire free index fund cheat sheet that shows many of the top investments in the market all in one place. So if you want to check that out, I'm going to have that linked in the description below for you. Which, while you're at it, if you want to get started on a new investing platform, whether that be a brokerage account or IRA, I'll have direct links below to some of the top options that you could get started with. And please know, at the end of the day, I want you to do what's best for your finances, but do know that depending on the ones that you choose to get started with, I may earn a commission for it, which is greatly appreciated. And as always, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and notifications button for future content like this.